Hello, everybody, and welcome to Adventures in History. I actually had to pause for a second and collect myself because of the puppysaurus there. That sort of had me a bit out of sorts, and it would not have been good for me to have just been like cackling on stream. Like, what's happening to Shade? That is amazing sci-fi. Hello, everybody. I hope you are all having a great day and a great week. It's been a long week on the home front. There's so much stuff going on at work this week. It has just been slammed from get there to get out the door time. So I am happy to have the opportunity to sit down with friends and take a break and have a good time and goof off and talk history. So I hope that you all are also having a restful, good week. Maybe we can average each other out, right? You did that with Red's face the other day, too. Oh, the old Jara Jam. So yeah, welcome to Show's Adventures in History. We talk about history, we have fun, we goof off, we tell bad jokes. We make really horrible puns sometimes. But we do have some learning going on in the background, right? It's sort of the purpose, if you will. I don't like the fact that history gets a bad rap and people say that history is boring and stuffy, so we try to fix all that here. Yeah, so we're going to hang out tonight. We are entering a new phase. Oh, with the sunglasses. That's great. Thank you, Joey. How's it going, man? Good to see you. Oh, good times. Good times. Puppy with sunglasses. She would not like that very much at all. The little unicorn headdress thing that she has on in the emote there only stayed on for about maybe 45 seconds. And she was shaking her head and trying to paw it off. She does not like stuff on her. A couple of winters ago, we got her a puppy sweater so that she could wear it when it's cold, which is not too common here where I live. But on the off chance that it does get pretty cold, she's a little butterball turkey. So we got her a little puppy sweater, and she doesn't care for that very much either. You may have allegedly made your cat wear an airbender outfit that you made for her. Allegedly. It stayed on her head long enough to snap a photo. Right, and that was about the length of time. That was about the duration. The duration of how long that lasted. It's really cool that Paleontologizing is partnered and can make all the cool emotes. I still have an open emote slot, and I know even what I want to put in that emote slot. I just yet to have located somebody that wants to do the artwork for it, that I think would be interested in doing that. So you may have allegedly worn your Appa onesie and forced her to take a picture with you. Oh, yip, right? All right. So, yeah, like I said, we're starting a new phase. What does that mean? Well, we're talking about history in chronological order. And that means we start at the beginning and we are moving through. But to make sure that we are able to actually get some narratives out of this, we do things in phases, which are about 100 years long. And that allows us to tell sort of a beginning and an end story of how things move through And sometimes we actually get really neat and clean endings, and other times we sort of end in the middle of some good stuff, and then we have to come back around to the next phase to figure out what happens. But we do tend to start over here in the far part of the Eastern Hemisphere and then move our way in this direction. And for the last few phases, Korea has been sort of tied in with other groups. But they're going to get an entire stream of their own tonight, because things in Korea during the 4th century, which we're in now, we're in the 300s. Congratulations, everybody. We are slowly catching up. Things are going to slow down, though, because the more people that have written history, the more history that we know, and the wider civilization spreads, and the more stuff there's going to be. And eventually, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, we're going to end up having to do phases in smaller chunks. The century-long phase is a thing that has a limited shelf life. We're going to end up doing like 50-year chunks of stuff. So stick around for the next couple of years, and I had thought briefly about how long it would take for us to catch up to modern time. And I initially thought that it would take about 3 years from where we were, and that was back like last phase. I think it might be closer to 3.5 years for us to catch all the way up with modern history, because there's a lot of stuff to go over. And of course, that assumes that I'm going to continue streaming that long. I don't see any reason why I would stop, but life happens, right? So there's that. Anyway, so we're going to talk about Korea. They're going to get their own stream tonight, and we have to remind ourselves that during this period of time, there are several different Koreas. There is not a unified Korea at that point. There isn't one now, so I don't know why. I would sort of push that idea. But when do we start over? You missed the Akkadians. Kelly, when we get caught up, I've actually wondered exactly what we would do. And I thought that we might just turn the entire show into viewer requests, and just do spotlight episodes. And that is a little bit daunting to me, because sometimes the viewer request episodes are things that I don't already have material on. Like a lot of the stuff that we cover here on the class, or here in the show, I have material that I've covered in class for. Start a future prediction stream. Yeah, adventures in future history. The VODs for the Akkadian should still be around, though, if you want to. You still got to think of a subject for yours. Well, it's not going anywhere. The points don't expire, so you get to in the year 2000, right? So I thought about doing just pure viewer requests, but that is a bit daunting. I thought that what we might do is do some sort of deep dive things on particular wars or particular people's lives. So focus on like interesting individuals that I think deserve a stream that probably wouldn't get a stream in any other way. Edgar Casey, Mayans. Yeah. Well, we've already covered the Mayans. We've hit the Mayans a few times, both their mythology, and then we had a stream on them. A couple of there will be more Mayans in this phase. Yep, we will talk about Calakmul and Tikal and all those big cities that they have that are hanging out over there. It'd be really neat to go see all of those. Anyway, let's talk Korea a little bit here. So yeah, the Korean Peninsula, it's this little guy right here. It's in proximity to, of course, China. China is the sort of gravitational center of the Eastern Asian culture at this point. But Korea does have their own independent culture. They have their own language and writing and such. But China is by far the more advanced and established civilization. We've also got now some people down here in Southeastern Asia that we talked about last phase. We've got a large and growing group of people up here in what would be more like the steppe area of Asia. And of course, we've got some people over here in Japan. And Japan will come up a couple of times in the stream tonight. But Korea is the focus. And we have 3 kingdoms in Korea at this point, and one other small group of cities called the Gaia Confederacy. But at this point, the Gaia Confederacy is really going to be limited in its ability to project power because the other 3 kingdoms are going to be significantly larger. So we have up here in the north the larger of the 3 kingdoms, which is called Goguryeo. We have the kingdom of Pekcha, which is this region sort of on this side of the peninsula. And then we have a group over here, the kingdom of Silla, which was lucky enough to get the title tonight, Flagpole Silla. I hope you all get the reference there. If not, I'm sorry. Not actually sorry. I quite like them. I do also have to admit that looking up pictures for this stream was a chore. The Korean ancient people apparently had some very strong aversion to creating statues of their leaders. And they don't have coins with their leaders' faces on them. It's a very Western idea. So it's really hard to find pictures of a lot of these people. And I ended up having to sort of add a couple of filler pictures in just because I don't like having just like a tiny little bit of pictures. So there are a couple of pictures in the list tonight that are kind of goofy. So be aware. Now, one of the things that is going to play in very heavily to our discussion tonight of Korea is the fact that China over here is not having a good century. And we'll come back to China in 2 episodes and talk about the Jin dynasty of China and what's happening in the 4th century for them. But for our particular topic tonight, the most important thing for us to remember is that the Jin dynasty, which we established last phase, is having some really big central authority issues, and that they are not really going to be able to project their power very well. And that means that this region up here, right around the Yellow Sea, is territory that traditionally would have been included in the Chinese territory, but it's going to start falling away a little bit, and that's especially going to give our kingdoms up here in the northern peninsula a little bit more breathing space. The last time we talked about the Korean peninsula, the Chinese dynasty that was up in the north at that point, which was the kingdom of Wei, had come over and wrecked Goguryeo and destroyed their capital, Hwando, and left them in a pretty big mess. Silla has not a lot left for us, and neither does unified Silla. You're not bitter. Aw, yeah. We'll get to that point where Silla is sort of like the apex kingdom, but that's probably about 2 more phases down the road. 3 to 4, so 4 to 5, 5 to 6, and 3 more phases down the road, because that's mostly in the 600s, and then later from about the 6 to the early 9s when Silla is sort of like the boss. So, also, hey, Figment, good to see you. Hope you're having a good one. Trying to write a novel set in not a lot of info is hard. Yeah, there's not a lot to go on. We do have, by the way, one of the main sources of information that we have from Korea at this time is actually a collection of chronicles that goes through each of the 3 kingdoms, and it is very, very rough. It doesn't have a lot of details. It'll say stuff like this year, and then you might get an entry that says it did not rain this year, and that might be the entire entry for this entire year. A lot of the stuff that we know comes from taking that particular document and adding archaeological evidence to it and sort of fleshing out the story. Also looking at records from China. Sounds like your diary. Hey, Fogage, good to see you. It's just rude, that's what it is. The Samguk. I wonder if it's fully online. I'm trying to Google it right now. All right, I can't. I don't see one popping up easily at the top. But if you want to go read the actual the sort of the primary source document for this time, it's called the Samguk Sagi. So that's the primary source, and if you Google that, you can buy a copy of it that's been translated into English, and it's some fairly dry reading. I have a PDF version of it that I got through some connections with, because I have a login at the university where I used to teach, and I have a login at the college where I currently teach. I get to access a lot of stuff that's not necessarily readily available to the general public through things like cooperative agreements and subscription services and things that the college and the university pay for. So I have a copy of it, which I look through when I'm sort of needing to brush up on the stuff. Korea again. What did China do this time? Shiggy, Korea is going to be really good this time because China's having a bad day. So did I say hey Fogage? Hey Fogage, and hey Shiggy, good to see you. Okay, so Samguk Sagi, if you want to go read that, you're welcome to check that out. It's a chronicle, though. It's not a narrative history. It's just like dates listed and then very, very brief spurts of things. Like, and you might get a weird one. It's like a two-headed cow was born this year. It could be really something that weird. Or it could be, 8 sentences where it's like, and the king so-and-so decided to go fight against the so-and-so people, so he put an army together of 80,000 people and marched over the mountains and took the capital city from them. You never really know what you're going to get with the Samguk Sagi. I feel like Sagi sounds like a saga, and that makes me suspicious of the name of that resource. Yeah, like, that sounds a little too Western, and I don't know if I want to believe in that one or not. All right, so the Jin dynasty is very, very weak, and it's falling apart, and Korea is going to catch a breather from this. There are still regions of Korea that are under Chinese control directly, but because the central authority of China is falling apart, those are going to be sort of ripe for the taking. Goguryeo is going to take the opportunity to rebuild. They're going to move back into their capital city of Hwando. Again, it had been destroyed by the Wei Kingdom from 244 245. There's a big war between Goguryeo and the Kingdom of Wei. So Hwando gets rebuilt in about 70 years. They move back into the capital city. This is allowing them to sort of redistribute their power. But one of the bigger threats, because of the Jin dynasty falling apart, are these people called the Xianbei. And we've mentioned them several times before. The Xianbei are effectively a horseback semi-nomadic tribal people that lived mostly right up here. And they had, at various points in time, managed to get their leaders, the Xianbei leaders, sort of integrated into parts of the Chinese government, especially in regions up very far north here. This region that was called Yan. And there were a couple of different Chinese provinces up here that had been effectively taken over by the Xianbei, and then China sort of granted them leadership as long as they paid tribute. So Xianbei people are going to be right next door to the Koreans, and the Xianbei, once the Jin start falling apart, are going to be a new fairly big threat. And there's the Korean, in case anybody wants the Hangul version of the name. It's an interesting read. Figment, I did not know that you were trying to write a book in that setting. We should talk about that. I'd be interested to hear your ideas. And of course to read if you needed an editor. Okay, so it's killing you. Writing a book is hard. Writing a book is hard. So the Xianbei at this time are being led by a guy named Murong Hui. And Murong Hui is going to be rather successful in carving off pieces of the northern Jin dynasty. He convinces some of these commanderies of the Jin dynasty to sort of flip coat and join his group. And he's going to be a constant threat to the kingdom of Goguryeo especially. Now, I don't have a picture of this guy, but what I can show you is a picture of a Xianbei horseback archer, which I was able to locate. So here we have one of the chonkiest horses ever, and our Xianbei archer on the top with his bow drawn. One thing I do like to point out here is that these horses that the Xianbei ride on are not really as tall as a lot of the horses that we think of today. Someone skipped leg day. The leg is there. It's just sort of outlined. So like here's the foot, and he's got sort of billowy pantaloons here. Neither can the guy that did this drawing, right? Oh, the horse. Ah, yeah, the horse skipped leg day. Totally. Look at those dinky little things. He's got like the chongus body going and then like little dinky legs. So, anyway, they have the hip quiver, which is pretty indicative of most horseback archers. You don't usually see the back quiver that would sort of stick up over a shoulder. This would be slung around the waist and could sort of swing around the hip here for easier access when you're galloping, so that you can fire sort of while riding, and you can steer with your legs and fire with your arms. We like to call them horses, but in reality they were just brown cows. No, the horses were not as tall. Like if you go today and you see a riding horse, and you think horse in a movie or something of that nature, you have these really long-legged horses with really long backs. But the horses that were very common in this region of the steppe, especially horses that would go on to be stuff like the Ruronin, which we'll talk about later on, and people like the Mongolian horses that were so famous with people like Genghis Khan, they were not the big, long-legged, gallopy horses of John Wayne. Yeah, they're sort of more like kind of big ponies, but they're kind of squat-legged, and they're not particularly as as tall. Draft, yes, not a donkey. No, not a donkey. Belgian cold-bloods. I don't know about horses very much either. I'm just trying to say that the ones that they used were not the full-sized, like, big horses that we have today. And clearly the guys that draw them are not particularly good at drawing them. They're not like thoroughbreds. Maybe they're closer to a quarter horse. There we go. Figment's got the terminology for us. All right, so this is sort of the setup in the background for the next stuff. So let's look at our kingdoms in order. And we're going to start with Goguryeo. Goguryeo are going to be by far the most active of the three kingdoms during this century. And they're going to have a lot of luck this century. And it's going to start with the rule of this guy named Micheon. Micheon rules from the year 300 to the year 331. He's actually the guy that's responsible for rebuilding the army and the capital city. He's going to be able to build up a large enough army that he is effectively able to, by the middle part of his reign, around the 310s or 311s, he's going to be able to start like holding the Xianbei out. But look at the horsies. Must have been the most adorable army being attacked by. Yeah, Michael. Yeah, I'm sneaking in English words. I'm trying to completely mess up everybody's understanding of Korean history. You should not believe a word that I say because clearly what I am is a giant liar. So, one of the things that Michion recognizes is that China is really for real falling apart. And he's going to take this opportunity to start expanding. Now, if we go all the way back to when the Han Dynasty was really powerful, this is back in the late 100s and the very, very early 200s. The Han Dynasty actually controlled quite a bit of Korea. And if we look at them, they had basically these 4 regions of Korea effectively under their control. Now, the first one of these to fall, and by the way, these are referred to as commanderies, which is sort of a weird word, but military state is probably an easier way to say this. So this is a region that is under control of a governor, but that governor is sort of they're basically military governors until the very end of the Han Dynasty and the beginning of the Jin Dynasty. At the beginning of the Jin Dynasty, one of the things that the Jin Dynasty does is actually revoke the military power from the governors of the region. And that's actually going to put a lot of these border areas at a lot of disadvantage, because if they want military support, then they're going to have to send all the way back to the capital, and then those armies are going to have to be mustered and sent all the way back out to these border zones. So by the time that we're looking at, the Lintun Commandery had already fallen apart. The Jinfan had managed to hang on a little bit, but part of it had been lost, especially this part right over here, and it had been renamed the Daifang. But the Xuantu and the Lelong Commandery, Okjo, wasn't that Chinese? I believe that was Korean, Shiggy. Someone has never seen a hoof coming at their head or leg. You did have a horse eat your favorite sweater while you were wearing it. Being pegged to the ground by its front leg, horses are buttholes. Joey, that sounds like a story worthy of a dramatic retelling on YouTube. You should get some of your friends together and put them in a horse outfit and have them reenact this scene with you while you do dramatic reading. Yeah, the next BoJack Horseman episode. Man, how good was BoJack Horseman? Anyway, so at the time that we're talking about, Xuantu was up there, Leilong was up there, and Jinfan was renamed Daifang. So everybody's going to remember all of those words like I do. Because everybody is a historian like I am, right? So, horse tried to randomly bite you while you were in Egypt. Well, that stinks. BoJack, so sad, just over and over again. So sad. Yeah, it's like they give him a glimmer of potential redemption, and he's just like, I'm going to poop on that. But it's such a good show, and it's real. Like, it's really good. It's just really good. Anyway, when the Jin Dynasty does all of this rearranging and they remove the military power from their regional governors, and then when the internal structure of the Jin Dynasty starts to falter, Goguryeo, especially Minchon down there, is going to see this as a golden opportunity, and he's going to start conquering. He's going to take over Xuantu in 302. Leilong falls in 313. And when Leilong, it's actually just like an annexation. He sort of just moves in and says, I own you now. There's not even necessarily a really big fight. He's able to just depose the leader of the Leilong Commandery, and then he sort of just puts his people in charge. There's not even necessarily an overwhelmingly large amount of fighting. There are a couple of scuffles here and there, but no like really big battle. And by that point, the Daifang Commandery was effectively cut off and surrounded by Korean kingdoms all over, and he then annexed them in 314. So the last actual land that China controlled inside the Korean peninsula is going to be swallowed up by the kingdom of Goguryeo by the time we get to 314. And this is going to trigger a little bit of fighting because the Xianbei are very upset. The Xianbei had sort of larger regional imperial designs of their own, and were really interested in taking over as much of old China as they were able to get their hands on. And because Goguryeo is now sort of in a commanding position, this is going to cause some friction. Now, I would love to show you a picture of Mincheon, and I misspelled his name here, by the way. It's supposed to be Mincheon, like this. Not to be weird, but you always get confused between Jin and Shin. Yeah, it's fair. It's fair. And there's also this one, which is kind of like Jin, which is different than Jin and Shid. So, and then there's Xian, yeah, right? So, Chinese being a fairly tonal language like that doesn't work very well translating sometimes into our more defined syllabic languages. And of course, English is a horrible one to try to translate anything into because English is not one language. It's 4 languages in a trench coat trying to buy alcohol. Anyway, so I would love to show you a picture of Mincheon. Unfortunately, I could not find a single one of him at all. Not even like an artist rendition that I thought would have been accurate. So here's a picture of some kimchi. Kimchi is a very popular side dish in Korea. It is made from fermented vegetables, especially things like cabbage, but also other types of vegetables that can be prepared in multiple ways. Yeah, kimchi. There we go. Woo! Yeah, I told you I had to put some filler pictures in here. You think English got the alcohol and has been drinking it for a while? Yeah, I think so too. Mincheon seems much more Korean than Micheon. Yeah, I just misspelled it. That was my own issue. So when we see the Goguryeo kingdom expand and the Xianbei get really upset, this is going to start causing a lot of trouble. And the guy who has to take over after Mincheon is his son, and his son's name is Goguguan. Goguguan, yeah. So he is now the leader of Goguryeo, and he's got to deal with these Xianbei invaders because the Xianbei first start doing some sort of border raids, but then there's a new Xianbei leader, a guy named Murong Jin, who decides that he's not happy with just raiding. He wants to go take big chunks of territory. And in 342, there's going to be a really big war between Goguryeo and the Xianbei, and this is going to be really bad for Goguryeo because the Xianbei are going to basically kick their tails. And they take the capital city. They manage to take, well, according to the history books, which of course we know are probably going to over-exaggerate things quite a bit, they take 50,000 Koreans from Goguryeo back to Xianbei territory as slaves. Now, was it really 50,000? Maybe. It was a lot. It was enough that 50,000 would not necessarily have been too far away. We don't really know how many they took. But they do wreck the capital city, and to make it worse, they capture Goguguan's mother, who would have been Mincheon's wife, and they capture Goguguan's wife. So they have the queen and the queen mother. And that's pretty rough on a king. Sometimes you get surprised about the validity of those weird statistics, especially with the Greek tales. Yeah, so the thing about ancient estimations is that they're always going to be designed to sort of give the people reflected in the source some sort of benefit, right? They're going to be able to claim like, oh, look, we defeated this massive army. That number was, they were 100,000 guys there, and our army was only 40,000 guys. And one of the things that a lot of archaeologists and historians are forced to do is really do a lot of really, really tedious work. And this involves looking at contemporary types of settlements in these areas. We can sort of postulate that based on a village of this size with this many number of homes, there were probably around this many people living in this area. And then we have to look at settlement density. So in this many square miles, there are typically this many settlements that we have located. Then you have to sort of extrapolate that with, if there were this many total population people, how feasible would it be for, this percentage to be male and this percentage to be female? And it's really, really tedious work to sort of go back and fact check all these numbers. And sometimes the numbers actually come out fairly close. Like some of you mentioned the Greeks. So like some of the numbers that Alexander the Great gets attributed, like in his conquests of basically everything, right, are actually pretty close to what he probably had. Some of the numbers that are given to some of the Roman leaders and some of the numbers that are attributed to especially later dynasties of the Chinese, like the Tang dynasty, those are actually pretty close to being believable. But when it comes to something like these numbers in the Samguk Sagi in Korea, when they say that they took 50,000 people, we just don't know. Because first off, this area has a lot of, how do I say this? A lot of contentious archaeology, right? Contentious archaeology, where because of this area's history, both China and Korea sort of claim historical heritage over this area, especially this area sort of right around in here, this Manchurian area. Because the Kingdom of Goguryeo for a while is going to actually hold all of this. And it gets really, really big. And of course, China says, no, that's our people. Those people are actually Chinese. And a lot of the archaeology that has been done in that area, because it is in modern day China, has been, well, I mean, I'll just say it, it's been tampered with. And the archaeology that is published by the official archaeological branch of the Chinese government can't be trusted. You can't expect them to tell the truth, because China, especially the central government of China, has an approved narrative, and they're claiming everything as Chinese. They're effectively trying to make themselves the only regional culture that existed for most of human history in Asia, and it's just not true. So we don't know as much as we would like. And it's also fair to say that the region here is in North Korea. So how much reliable archaeological data do you think is going to come out of North Korea? There was a report back under the last ruler, Kim Jong-il, that archaeologists in North Korea had found the tomb of the first Korean emperor and had found a fossilized / perhaps mummified unicorn skeleton. So this is the stuff that we're trying to deal with when we try to look at historical data from this region. It's just not reliable, and it sucks. It's one of those areas that has a really rich cultural history, that has a lot of different people moving around through it. We've already talked about the Xiongnu and the Xianbei, the Goguryeo, the northern part of China. This will go on to be part of the Mongolian Empire, the Jurchen, Jin, Joseon. There are so many people that live up in this area, but it's just, yeah, it's just a mess. How big was that fish? Nishion Hada means lowly, humble, of low origin. Wow. It was 10 football fields long. Not a great sounding name. Yo, I'm here to talk to your lowly man. Get over here. I've missed a lot of chat. We have a whole state just named colored, so interesting. Hada is an action to do, to be lowly, to be humble. If you use the Chinese characters correctly, it could be good. Oh, well, there we go. Protecting our heritage. Word hippo. Aha. Don't trust the North Korean reports. Don't do it. That's a different word. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So the situation is bad. The Xianbei invade. They capture the queen. They capture the queen mother. They wreck the capital city again. And what is even particularly really bad is that they dig up the body of Michion and then they steal his body, which is really a bad thing to do, right? We stole the dead remains of your old king. Who does that? Who does that? And of course, I can't show you a picture of that guy, but what I can show you is this. This is the royal burial field at Huangdo. So this is their old capital city. All of these are burial mounds, and it is suspected that at least one of these was Minchion's tomb. Now, we don't know exactly which one it is, but it could be one of these. And these are pretty big. It's just a picture from a long way away, right? So, like, this little building right here, little guard shack. Pretty cool stuff. Again, I would love to show you photos of all these people, but I can't. Anyway, so what is Gogu Guan to do? Well, he runs away. Run away! Run away! And he's going to move down to a new city, which was at that time just sort of like a little kind of hole in the road. But it's this place called Pyongyang. And he's going to build a really big fortress there and turn Pyongyang into a functional temporary regional capital. And this is going to be his basis of operation. Looks like a lot of the setting of MASH. Well, there you go. Because, MASH is supposed to be in Korea. I don't actually know where they filmed MASH, but if I had to guess, I would say probably California. Probably the mountains of northern central California. But I don't know that for certain. So, Goguryeo is in bad shape. And to make it worse, at this period of time, there's going to be an invasion from one of the other Korean kingdoms, Paekja, the kingdom that would have been just to their south, sort of down here, this part of the Korean peninsula, is going to invade north because, hey, the north just got wrecked by the Xianbei, so it's going to be a good time to go invade them. So Gogu Guan is sort of holed up in Pyongyang, and the Paekja ruler at this time is a guy named Gwen Chogo, and there's going to be this really big epic battle at the fortress of Pyongyang, and this is actually one of the periods of time where we have, this particular battle, we have some decent descriptions. There's going to be this big fight, and then there's a siege, and then there's a rally, and then there's an invasion, but long story short, Gogu Guan is going to kind of sally out of the fortress to try to defeat the Paekja army, and he is going to be killed in 369, and that is going to leave a pretty big hole in Goguryeo, because, well, then what's left? What's left? Well, the next guy... Oh, and I guess I could show you a picture. So we don't know very much about Gogu Guan. We just don't know very much about him other than what he did. But there's a potential thing here. So I can show you this. So potentially, this image, which is in a tomb, this is a Anak tomb. There's a tomb region outside of the area of Pyongyang called Anak, where he was potentially buried. And by the way, he did actually end up recovering his father's remains and reinterred them. So this photograph might be Gogugwan, maybe. It could also be a picture of Mencheon, maybe. We don't really know who it is at all. But this could be a picture of him. Again, I'm looking for as much as I can show. It's kind of hard sometimes. So, what's going on with Goguryeo? Well, they just lost their king. They just lost their capital. They had this big battle. What's next? The next emperor or king guy is a guy named Sosurim. MASH's filming location, Malibu Creek State Park, California. Closest city is Calabasas. I will admit that I don't actually know where Calabasas is. Calabasas, California. Let's look it up. Oh, that's in really deep South California. Let's throw the borders up. Boop-a-doo-doo. Okay, so I was expecting it to be more along the region of here, where they were filming stuff, but they were filming it down here. And I guess that makes sense because, I mean, that's some pretty rugged, mountainy looking areas. That could be a good Korean analog. Thank you for looking that up, Joey. All right, back over to the Korea. Doop-a-doop-doop-doop. Hey, Batbird, good to see you. If you're not already, go follow I Am Batbird, who does art on Twitch. Sometimes traditional, sometimes digital, but always fun. I am Spartacus, and is incredibly generous as well. I'm Spartacus. The MASH set actually burned once as a result of a forest fire, and they wrote that into the episode as a fire from an incendiary bomb. Huh. Well, there you go. I'm Spartacus. Joey coming in hot on the trail. Everybody's Spartacus tonight. Thank you both so very much. I appreciate that. I really do. As always, the funds that I get from Twitch end up coming right back into the stream. They are what purchased the light setup that I have, the camera that I have, the microphone, the monitor that I'm now using, the neat decorations that we have, little animated chain down there in the corner, paid for by viewers like you. I don't go have big steak dinners on these funds. These are ones that I try to filter back into the show. And what I'm doing right now is basically hoarding up stream funds in the hopes that I can afford a graphics card, which is kind of a gamble, especially for me not wanting to pay twice as much as they are, worth. Little cartoon chain is adorable. Yeah, I know. That was drawn and animated by Color by Emmy, who is a friend of the show and comes in sometimes. If you need any sort of work, Emmy is amazing. She is incredibly professional, does really great work, and her prices are incredibly fair and affordable. I cannot say nice enough things about Emmy. I basically the entire thing, the entire transaction took about a week and a half, basically. You entered me into a USGP. Joey, thank you. I appreciate the thought. I'm actually, I've signed up for 4 different, basically rotations with a couple of companies here in the United States where you basically put your name on a list, and then as the stock shows up, they get people on the list and distribute the particular goods. So I have heard reports that the lists that I am on sometimes last or sometimes as short as 4 months, but sometimes are as long as 6 months, and I'm not even sure if 6 months is going to be a reliable amount. But I'm basically standing in a very, very long line right now, and the first one of those that comes available, I'm going to just get it because, yeah. I'm not really going to be too terribly picky right now. If I can get something... And by the way, this is directly from the company, so they're being sold at the manufacturer's suggested retail price instead of the scalper massive inflated price online. So I will be able to get one soon, and I have enough money in the stream budget so far to get all of the ones that I've signed up for. So whichever one pops up, I'll be able to get it as soon as I can, and I'll be able to further upgrade the streaming capacity. And we can get rid of stuff like these weird little artifacts that pop up when I want to use Google Earth, which is a problem right now with encoding issues that my computer is having, because I'm having to do the encoding for the stream on the actual processor of my computer instead of through a graphics card, which is a bit of a butt, but it's what I got, right? Loving is what I got. Anyway, Sosurim, what does he do? Well, basically, when he takes over in 371, this is after Gogugwan gets killed, his first job is basically to try to reestablish order because the country was really falling apart. And one of the things that he's going to do is sort of rewrite the entire legal code and reorganize this to focus more towards the king. This is really going to be an effort in centralizing the power inside of the Kingdom of Goguryeo. And this is going to... Well, I mean, there's not really necessarily a good way of saying this to be nice to Sosurim, but he's going to basically rule by fiat, and he's going to kill everybody that gets in his way, and he's going to force people to stand in line. But he's doing this because Goguryeo was in a really, really bad spot. It had lost a big chunk of territory. It had lost its capital city. It had lost its last king. So he is going to be able to rebuild the army, and he is going to be able to start establishing some contact with the outside world. It's during his reign. He reigns from 371 to 384. And it's during his reign that the Kingdom of Goguryeo is really going to start being interested in a lot of the stuff that was becoming culturally important down in China, especially Confucianism and Buddhism. And one of the themes of 4th century Korea is that Buddhism is really going to get into Korea during this century, and it's really going to start becoming not just a central religion of the region, but in the case of particular kingdoms like Pekja, the official religion of the kingdom. And you're going to see big Buddhist temples built by Sosurim, and there's going to be a lot of interest in sort of bringing in the Confucianism, especially. And if this doesn't necessarily cause any larger issue, this is very believable. If you know anything about Confucianism, you'll know that philosophically speaking, this is a philosophy or religion that really focuses a lot on doing your job, obeying the head of the country, not staying in your lane, not getting outside, not being rebellious. And that matches a lot with what Sosurim is trying to get done here, because just to be honest, again, the country was falling apart and he had to kind of put things back together. But in 384, he is going to die, and we get a new king of Goguryeo. Whose name is Gogugyeong. Gogugyeong is going to be able to capitalize on the victories of his brother. So Sosurim is actually his brother, who died pretty young. So Goguryeo is going to be able to take the army that Susarim was able to put back together, push the Xianbei out, and take back over the region that Goguryeo had lost. And in order to shore up the defenses against Baekje, who was basically trying to be the new big power, Goguryeo is actually going to ally with Silla, the kingdom down on this side of the peninsula. And they had not necessarily been natural allies. They had been allies before, but the situation for the majority of the last century and the beginning of this century was Baekje and Silla sort of teamed up because Goguryeo was kind of the big bad, right? They were the big threatening kid on the block, and the two smaller kingdoms down here wanted to sort of band their group together in order to, potentially fight off the big bad guy. But Goguryeo is going to be able to sort of lure the Silla over, and we'll talk about why that's possible towards the end of the stream when we talk specifically about the Silla. There's some stuff going on down there. But that is where we are going to leave it, because the next king of Goguryeo that takes over actually does take over in this century. He takes over in 391. But he's a bit of a spitfire. He's a pretty powerful dude, and he rules for quite a long time into the 5th century. So we're going to hold off on him until the next time we come back around to Korea, because Goguryeo is going to hit its height in the next phase. Spoiler alert. All right, so we've mentioned Baekje a few times. So let's talk about them specifically. I know that looks like Baekje, but it's pronounced Baekje. Some people actually spell it with a P and then a CH. Again, this is one of these languages that doesn't necessarily directly translate very well into English. But Baekje is kind of the... Hey, you moose. You betcha. The B is pronounced with kind of almost a halfway between a B and a P, though. Baekje. The closest modern analog to that is the last name P-A-K, which is Paek. It's a very common last name in Korea, and a lot of the really powerful families are still ones that trace their lineages back to the Paek family. All right, so what's up with Baekje? Well, Baekje's had some problems. And at the beginning of the century in 304, one of those commanderies which had yet to fall to Goguryeo was actually going to get in and assassinate their king. And that's going to be pretty rough. So the 4th century does not start off very great for the Baekje. They're going to be in sort of disarray. And when Goguryeo starts doing all of this expanding, that's really going to put a damper on their future. Reminds me of the first name Yen. Yeah. Instead of Yan. And then Y-E-N is like yen instead of yen. It's an odd language. Baekje. Yeah, Baekje. But the K and the J makes that Baekje kind of breathy sound. Baekje. And Figment would know. Figment was over there for a while. Anyway, so how are they going to get together? They mostly get together when... and honestly, the first few decades are not so great for the Baekje. But this guy, Gwenchogo, he's going to be a dude, a really powerful king, and he is going to wait and sit back. He rules, by the way, from 346 to 375, and while the big war between the Xianbei and the Goguryeo are going down, he's just going to sort of sit and wait. And then after Hwando falls, this is the guy that goes up to fight at Pyongyang, the guy that ends up killing Goguryeo. but he's not going to be done with just that. So he is also going to be another one of these kings that's really centralizing authority. That's sort of another theme that's happening in Korea at this time. The sort of loose confederation of cities idea is going to sort of go by the wayside, and strong central authority kings are going to be the new kind of thing. He is also going to move his capital. So it's sort of ironic, or perhaps not ironic, coincidental. It's kind of coincidental that when the Goguryeo kingdom moves its capital to Pyongyang, around the same time, the Baekje are going to move their capital to Seoul. Of course, Seoul and Pyongyang are the modern capitals of North and South Korea. So it's just kind of a weird coincidence of history that this both sort of happens at the same time. He's also going to be focused on re-centralizing the government, but also, and the way that he does it is basically by, and this doesn't go over very well, but he takes a lot of the authority from the nobles who had become pretty powerful. So the kingdom itself had always been sort of an organized group of really powerful clans. And the leaders of these clans sort of generally recognized that the king was the king. But under Gwenchogo, this is going to change pretty heavily because, again, the goal here is to have one king that is sort of super powerful instead of a whole bunch of nobles that, if they wanted to, could get rid of the king. But this does not go over so great. But this is the period of time when Baekje is going to have the largest influence that it's ever going to get. So this is sort of the golden age of the Baekje kingdom. And this is when there's going to be a lot of stuff happening, culturally speaking, inside of Baekje as well. There's going to be a lot of trade with China, and there's going to be a lot of naval exploration / trade set up. Baekje, being right here, is going to have access to the Yellow Sea, also over here into Japan, all the way down here, the coastline. And they have a lot of really good shipbuilders, and they're going to start really ramping up naval trade. They're going to come over here and make contact with the Yamato court, who were the emperors in Japan. And this is actually where I can maybe show you another photograph. Well, I can show it to you. It is this guy. Bum, ba, da, bum. So this is a replica. First off, it's not the actual sword, but this is a replica of what's known as the Chiljudo and here we see Baekje. Look at there. Whee! This is the 7-pronged sword. So the story here is that Gwenchogo is going to go visit the Japanese, and or not, like, he doesn't go visit, he sends ambassadors to visit, and they set up ambassadorial relationships. But he strikes up a friendship with the Yamato emperor and sends him a 7-pronged sword. And the original of the sword is actually still in Japan. It's kept in a Japanese monastery, and it's not open for viewing, so you can't go see it. But this is a replica that is in a Korean museum, which you can go see. So that's the thing about Japanese treasures. A lot of them are hard to get to. And we are being visited by a puppy. And I'm sure that everybody would love to see the puppy. So let me scoot back a little bit, and we'll call the puppy up. Come and see me. Come here. Come on. Hello, Kaylee Poppy. Hello. What are you up to? Give me some sugar? Oh, thank you. So generous. You sniffing? What you doing? Oh no, what was that? What was that? Woof! Woof! Bothered. I am bothered. Ooh. Come here, you big baby. Come here. Bork. Work. Work. Well, come here. I'm Spartacus. What? What? What do you want? I don't know what you want. Do you want to go outside? Is that what you're after? Well, you have to go see Brittany. Go see Brittany. She'll let you outside. I don't know why you come to me. I'm in the middle of something. 16-month streak. Figment. Not Figment. KP. Good gracious. Thank you for being Spartacus once again, my friend. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. That's exactly why she comes to you. Like, I mean, what am I going to do? Like, pause the stream and walk all the way up to the front of the house and let her outside? I don't know. Like, I can tell right now that Brittany is in the kitchen, which is right next door to the door to go outside. Who knows? Who knows? Oh, yes, we can share the puppy emote. I must share the puppy emote. Anyway, so Gwen Chogo is going to establish trade relationships with Japan. This is going to be a fairly interesting relationship because it appears that at some point in this area, between the last phase, which was 2 to 300, and now from 3 to 400, there's a lot of animosity between some of the Japanese people and especially the Korean kingdom of Silla. And it might be, potentially, this is a hypothetical, we can't prove this for certain because Japanese written records at this time are basically non-existent. You think you're the only one who still has the founder subscriber badge. So anybody that initially got that badge that does subscribe will get it back. And it's also not always one that shows. I think Mac probably has one. I don't know who still has the first. That would be an interesting thing to see. I don't know if I could even tell who still has that. But I do thank you for your continued support. And for giving me Jeff Bezos' money. I don't know what you want, puppy. Do you want to go under the table? Well, here, go under the table. I don't know why you want to go under the table. There's nothing under there. Go on. Well, go on. She's back in here looking at me like I. But if you're curious, Shane has been taking sub for 16 months. There we go. It does not seem like it has been that long. It does not seem like I've been an affiliate for that long. That's kind of crazy. 16 months, man. I'm having a moment. I just had a whole moment. I still, 2020 seriously affected my perception of time. It really seriously did. I do not feel like time is passing in the right amount of time anymore. It's really weird. Okay, so Gwen Chogo is going to be the king at the height of the influence of Pekja, and things are going to be really great for him. They're going to continuously mess with Goguryeo. They're going to go sack Pyongyang again in 377. And this is actually going to sort of be, again, one of the reasons why Goguryeo manages to ally with the Silla, because the Pekja just won't leave them alone. They keep sort of going after them and going after them and going after them. Because, of course, the Pekja want to take more land. They want to be able to sort of push up north. And they're fairly successful in expanding a little bit northward. But they're not really able to completely dislodge Goguryeo. Okay, so Pekja. Oops. Nope. Gosh, words. Clicking on the wrong thing. All right, so what's going on with Silla? And I always want to put an H in there because you pronounce it with an H. But there's no H in the word. Silla, so Flagpole Silla. I'm not sick, but I'm not well. that actually came to me while I was watching Steve Sketch's stream earlier. I made a quote from that song, and then Moose actually typed the name of the song in. And I mean, I know the name of the song, but then I was like, hey, I was looking for a title of the stream anyway, so boom, there we go. It's weird how stuff sort of like jiggles loose in your brain. So what is Silla up to? And again, they are the kingdom that is on this part. They're sort of just this little region right in here. That is the kingdom of Silla. What are they up to? So for the first half or so of the century here, they're really not doing too terribly much except for arguing with Japan. And again, we're not really 100% certain exactly what's going on here, because the Korean sources say that the Koreans were invading Japan a lot of this time, and some Koreans even claim that there were colonies of Silla over here in Japan, especially in regions like right around here, this little peninsula right here, and even as far up as this little peninsula right here. Now, whether or not that happened is really, really hard to determine. There was a centralized government in Japan, but it was mostly down here. This was the Yamato court, the first emperors of Japan. But the Japanese sources from this time are really unreliable. They are mostly written in mythological format, with, you know, their emperors living for 150 years and ruling for that long. It's a really kind of messy thing for us to figure out. And there's also not really any substantial archaeological evidence to suggest that there was an active effort during this time of the Silla to go colonize Japan. It's kind of, and I should say, there's no unobjectable evidence. There are some people that say, "Oh yeah, look, there's the stuff," and I don't think it's conclusive. Let me just put it that way, and we won't have to get into the really nasty arguing. It's also fair to say that there are contentious works of archaeology that come out of this period between Japan and Korea. For those of you that do not know, there is a lot of contention between the country of Japan and the modern country of South Korea, and especially the country of North Korea, going back to historical periods, all the way back to this period, but especially dealing with the period of time just prior to World War I and then through the end of World War II, where Japan had conquered and annexed Korea and treated it really badly. There's still a heated debate over an island, right? So there's a lot of contentious archaeology where stuff that gets discovered immediately gets translated as, oh yeah, look, this is evidence of Korean civilization over in Japan, and the Japanese are like adamantly not even opening the door to that possibility because they want to say that they're actually not influenced by Korea. And Korea gets a bad rap in a lot of sort of popular archaeology today, because a lot of people want to either say that Korea was not really that big of a deal and had no influence at all, or they want to say that Korea was just a little, like a Chinese clone, right? Like everything that Korea did was just a copy-paste job from China, which is not the truth. And they don't want to give Korea enough credit for influencing Japan. But it really did have a really big influence over Japan. So the people that brought wet rice agriculture to Japan, the people that brought metallurgy to Japan were Koreans. Well, I mean, they weren't like modern Koreans, but they came from Korea and migrated over to Japan. That you can't just say that it didn't work. Also, during Japanese colonization, all Korean archaeological finds were divided, half to Japan museums and half to Korea. So the artifact lists are a mess too. Yeah, there we go. Right? So, you know, while the Japanese are digging stuff up, they're even claiming like, oh, this is clearly Japanese. Hey, JMR, good to see you. For those of you that are not already, you should be following JMR Killer, who is a Game streamer mostly, but also does some Gundam stuff and model building now. Go give him a follow. You'll have a good time hanging out in the gaming fort. Hey, Emmy, good to see you. And there's Emmy. I talked very positively about you earlier, Emmy. I hope that your ears were itching in the best of ways. Go follow Color by Emmy. Does a great stream. Really good art of various sorts, from animation to product design stuff to graphics design for companies to making shirts to drawing cartoons. You never know, but it's always fun. It's always fun. I have such great stream friends. I really do. I really do. I've been lucky enough to come into contact with some truly cool people that I feel like I would hang out with in real life if such a thing were possible. All right. So I haven't been able to show you a picture in a while because, again, we don't have a lot of pictures from this period of time. So here's a puppy. This puppy is a breed called Gendo. And the Gendo breed is the official dog breed of South Korea. Yeah. And look how cute he is. Look at his little face. He's got a little piece of glass in his mouth, like he's got a little... Oh, look at him. There we go. Oh, extra puppy. Again, it's really hard to find photos. I could not find a lot. I don't like showing no photos, so I decided I would just throw some filler in there. And who doesn't like looking at puppies, right? If you don't like looking at puppy pictures, I don't know what's wrong with you. Anyway, so there's this big fight between what's actually going on between Silla and Japan. Silla says that it had... we want to call the puppy back. Okay, cool. Let me call the puppy back. Kaylee is outside right now. I did not know. But as soon as she comes back inside, we will let her come up. She was in here bugging me earlier to go outside, and then I did not hear that she had actually gone outside. You might never look at small white dogs the same after Korea. You're sorry, but there's too many small dogs. Yeah, the Bichon Frise, or however you say it, the little like French poodly looking thing, those are really, really big in Korea right now. So, I got to do what I got to do. One of the things that does appear to be fairly clear about the relationship between Silla and Japan is that there was animosity. And we know that somewhere around the 350-ish mark, 350-ish, it does look like there was some sort of sizable invasion from Japan into the southern part of the peninsula. So like right down here, which would have been Silla territory. And this is actually going to be one of the sort of mechanisms that eventually breaks up the Pekja-Silla arrangement and makes Silla go ally with Goguryeo, who were much larger and had troops that they could spare in case Silla needed a bailout, right? Because Japan was apparently invading in such a sizable number that it might actually be able to take over. So we do know that that's happening. And that is happening during the reign of a guy named Naimul, king of Silla. And he reigns from 356 to 402. We don't know too terribly much else about that I'll take the piano key necktie, thanks. Gotta love Zoolander, right? You just gotta love it. I mean, you don't have to love it, but I don't know why you wouldn't love it. Anyway, so Naimul is going to ally with Goguryeo and then spend a large portion of his reign fighting off this invasion from Japan. Now, we don't know the size of the armies. We don't even know the name of the ruler of Japan that would have been in charge, because the dynasty lists in Japan at this time are a hot mess. And we'll talk about that again when we talk about Japan next week. We really don't know a lot about who the actual rulers are. But I can show you where Naimul is buried. He is buried in this mound. Look at there. Look at there. Something that is directly tied to a leader. I can actually show you where he is. He is... he was buried right here. Look at there. Boom. Naimul buried right there. Check it out. And I can't really say anything else about him because there's not necessarily a whole bunch else to say. And Silla basically spends this entire country hanging out, doing their thing, and then Japan shows up and becomes a bit of a problem. And again, this is where we run into this issue of the sources just are not particularly thorough. They talk a little bit about a little bit, and then they don't say much at all. And this is a frustrating situation because this is a very transformational time inside of the peninsula, and we don't know as much about it as we would like to have known about it. You've been there. You stood in front of his tomb. It was greener. Cool, Figment. I actually wondered if you had been to his, because Silla was completely... Well, not completely, but the capital of Silla and the majority of Silla was down in South Korea, which means that you can actually go see a lot of the stuff. You do not go to North Korea to visit the archaeological sites. You don't really go to North Korea at all. Though, speaking of North Korea, an interesting thing here, side note, has nothing to do with the discussion, but there is a graphic novel, and it's just called Pyongyang. And it's written from the perspective of this French animator who went over to North Korea because, and this is something that I did not know, North Korea has a lot of animation departments that work on a lot of European cartoons. And this is actually something I learned about on stream. Somebody brought this up on stream earlier, and I sort of started digging around. But anyway, this French cartoonist went to North Korea to live there for a year and a half or so to work on these cartoons, and drew a graphic novel when he got back that described his experience over there. And it is fascinating, just the weirdness of living in Pyongyang. Do they have an oral tradition similar to Hebrew? They have a written document that's, sort of a chronicle of kings, but what they don't have is a narrative document. So they have sort of a glorified list, and it says stuff like King Naimul, who rules from 356 to 402, and it doesn't say 356 to 402. It says the number of years that he reigned. And then it's like first year, and it'll say there was an eclipse, and that's all that it says. And then it's like year number 2. It rained a whole lot this year, and that's all that it'll say. And then the next line might say, Japan invaded, they had a really big army, we fought them off. So it's not really a story. It's not telling you sort of the day-to-day operation of how they operated, or a lot of the big rules that they were doing. It might just say enacted reform. What does that mean? And a lot of that is left to archaeologists and textual criticism to sort of figure out what they mean a lot. In Gyeongju, they have park-like areas that enclose the tomb grounds. They're big photo spots. One less tourist park area had a yoga group meeting between the tomb mounds. Aww. Is that like when we went to Cahokia and the hipsters were running up and down the steps of Monk's Mound at Cahokia? Oh, it's like talking to your dad on the phone. Like, how are you, Dad? Well. What's going on? Nothing. How's Mom? Well. Yeah, it's just very brief. You don't get a lot of data sometimes. It's just... yeah, sure, absolutely. Go ahead. Emmy, links are always open, and I mean, I trust you. You can do whatever you want to in chat. You're good. You're good. Yes, and it is a really, really interesting book. If you've ever wondered what day-to-day life is like in the capital city of Pyongyang, or even in North Korea at all, it's weird. Like, there's so many just weird rules. Like, in most of the rooms, there's a rule that you have to have a picture of the dear leader, and nothing else can be hung on that wall at all. And the way that they hang the picture, it sort of like leans out from the wall so that it's like the picture is actually looking down on you. It's a lot of really bizarre stuff. Like where you can go and what you can see. It's crazy. Sort of, but you're not allowed on the tombs. There are fines and jail time associated. Oh. Well, I mean, I guess that's fair. Nobody's buried in Monk's Mound, right? It's just a big ceremonial mound. So, you want to read it? Emmy, I have a digital copy of it. I don't know if that would be interesting to you, but if you want to read it, I would encourage you to support the author. And support your local comic shop. If you can order that from a local comic shop, go order it from a local comic shop. You can buy it from Amazon if you need to, but local comic shops need your help. All of the ones that I love have closed, unfortunately. I'm having to drive basically to New Orleans now to get comics. And I do, because I'd rather buy it from a local comic shop. So. Okie doke. I think I have heard the puppy return inside. So let me call the puppy, and we'll get the puppy up. Otherwise, I am done with the material today. So let me call the puppy. She is a mess. She was up front playing with the chicken and did not want to come back here. So I absconded with her. So there we go. There was the puppy. Everybody get the Amazon. Yes, there we go. Something noticed about communism regime, they don't believe in a god. The leader acts like their own version of God. Yeah, that's pretty common. And in North Korea, that is especially common because they are very oddly devoted to the Kim family. And it is a bizarre situation. It's just so weird. That's a really interesting group or book, though. Okie doke. So, I don't know what I'm doing here. What am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. I think what I am doing is looking for somebody to rate. But I can say this. So I'm done with the Korean portion of the stream today. But as always, if you have questions about anything that we talked about, or if you want to do some point redemption stuff, you're welcome to do so. Or if you just want to chit chat about something, you're welcome to do so as well. The entire country is basically a cult. Yeah, it kind of is. And you can think that, and you can sort of know that, but like until you, I did not know how culty it was. Like I knew that it was bad, but I did not know. Yeah, so that's a weird thing going on. There, people have successfully transplanted a pig kidney into a human, which opens all sorts of potential issues for transplant options. And if that's something that can work, would help a lot of people and potentially eliminate the need for things like dialysis. That's a very interesting development. I have not looked into that enough to understand all of the ins and outs of it. Just to be honest, the biological sciences on that level are one of the things that I know very little about. I actually know more about how things work on very, very small levels because of hanging around my wife than I do what's going on at sort of the larger levels. So, yeah. That's weird, though. And there had always, well, not always, there had previously been things I know where there had been heart valve replacements where they had successfully used pig heart valves to replace faulty heart valves. And I think even there were a couple of instances where whole pig hearts had been transplanted. I don't know enough about all of that stuff, though, just to be honest with you. But I think that if we have, if nobody else has any questions, which you don't have to, or if nobody else has anything kind of going on, I think we shall go do, we'll go do a raid. And we'll see. This isn't appropriate for stream, but you should watch Little Big's Lolly Bomb music video. If you hear any bad press about the pig transplants, be sure it's not from the dialysis industry. They're not too keen on losing their... Yeah, that's fair to point out. Little Big's Lolly Bomb. I'm going to have to open this in a tab. Am I going to get myself in trouble for this? Okay, that looks like it's making fun of Kim Jong-il, so... we'll definitely wait for that to be off stream. All right, ladies and gents, let's go do ourselves a raid. We are going to go raid somebody that we have not raided in a really long time. Usually, Pyro is off is off stream well before we actually even start. So we're going to go raid Friendly Pyro, who is an artist who does all sorts of miniature painting, also does some fantasy maps. Pyro's a great streamer, has a really positive group of people, and is just a genuinely nice person. So we're going to go raid Friendly Pyro, show Pyro some love when we get there. As always, our battle cry is adventure, and if you have any of those lovely adventure hat emotes, you can throw those into the chat when we get there. The next time that you will see me is for Anonymous Cheerer. Thank you very much for that. Thanks very much for the bits. I greatly appreciate that. One step closer to that graphics card. The next time you'll definitely see me is this coming Tuesday. We will be talking in a viewer request stream about the First Crusade. And then following week, we'll do sort of a round robin around Asia, smaller kingdoms stream with some Japanese stuff, some Southeast Asia stuff, some North Central Asia stuff. Kind of catch up on who's going on. Otherwise, I will see everybody next time. Thank you all so very much for hanging out. Thanks to all the subs tonight. And I'll see you around the bend. Bye, everybody.